So today you can understand, right? We have to discuss again the architecture part of the Playwright, and this is going to start the things in the direction of learning Playwright. Okay, uh, right. So let me first start from the legacy part, right? How things have been in the industry and how we have worked on Selenium and IO, right? So if you know, right, Selenium, how Selenium used to work is we have your test script, right? You have a test script, right? You create test script. This is called as a client, right? This is called as a client. And what happens is this test script, right? You create using different libraries which Selenium provides, right? Like Selenium also provides multi-language support, right? You can write your code in Java, you could write in code in Ruby, right? You could write your code in C Sharp, Python, right? All of that is provided by Selenium, right? And you could write a test script, right? Using any of these libraries, right? So this acts as your client. Now, what happens in that setup is after this, right, you have a server, right? Which the server is what? The server is the your drivers, right? The browser drivers. So if you wanted to work on the Chrome, if this is your browser section and this is your Chrome thing, right? What happens here is this thing, right? The middle part is the drivers, right? This is the driver section, which acts like a server for us. And for every browser there is a specific driver which is being used to communicate with the browser. Okay, now these are the three component system in the architecture. And what happens here is Selenium job, right, is to make sure that this client which you have written using the languages which Selenium has provided, right, it is able to talk to the driver. Okay, that is the part of the Selenium thing, right, as a tool. So how does they communicate? They communicate through a protocol called W3C Web Driver Protocol. Okay, which is again based on the REST API concept. Okay, REST API as a communication layer, right? And this is how the interaction happens, right, between the client and the server. And this is what how architecture looks like. How driver talks to browser, right? It is not our concern, but just to make you aware, right? Every driver, right, knows has the native technology, right, which it uses to interact with the specific browser. Okay, and this is controlled by the team which has provided you the browser and the driver. Okay, so they use some native technology, right? When I say native, right, sometimes it is exposed, you are made aware of like what things are being used, but sometimes it is not, right? But generally what currently what I see is like they are talking to each other using a protocol called CDP. Okay, CDP, Chrome DevTools protocols, which they use to communicate between the driver and the browser. But there is no role played by us, right, in this communication. This is all done internally by these two components, right? Because both are being provided through the same team, which is Google. Okay. Similar things happens with the Firefox driver, right? You have a Firefox driver, right? If you wanted to talk with the Firefox, right? What is the role of Selenium? This is the role of Selenium. You get this, right? You get this protocol implemented by the Selenium team and the library, right, which you use to write the test script. Okay. After this process, right, all of these are managed by the respective teams. And this is how the automation has been in industry for quite a while now. Okay, when we talked about WebDriver IO, right, WebDriver IO also, right, uses a similar kind of a technology, right? WebDriver IO is first of all it is written using a one language, right? It uses JavaScript or TypeScript to use that. Let's say you wrote a script, right? You wrote a test script, and here also, right, the same thing happens. You can connect. So if your goal is to connect with the Chrome driver, right, Chrome browser, so what happens here is it also works on the same model. You have a test script, which is your client, It interacts with the driver, Okay, you can have a driver, you can have a Selenium grid, whatever you want, right? And then the communication. The only difference here is the difference here is Selenium. The default protocol which it uses, right, is WebDriver protocol, right, which is REST API based. Here in WebDriver IO, the default protocol being used is the WebDriver BD. Okay, this is the next generation communication protocol, right, or the protocol being used by the uh, all the automation tools, right? So this is, you can say, right, it is like, you can understand, this is like a next generation of WebDriver protocol. Okay. So this is being used currently by WebDriver.io. But apart from it, if you see, the components involved in this communication, right, are same as compared to Selenium. You have a client which you create using the test library, the scripts from the you need a driver, okay, and then there is a browser involved, right? There's a browser involved, and again, how they communicate to each other, it is not of a concern, but again, they for Chrome they are using CDP. Yeah, Anand, please.
Sorry, Akhil, I'm not sure if it is for everyone, but your voice was distorted
Okay.
for last couple of seconds.
Okay, then
Can you repeat?
yeah, sure, sure. I'll
This
repeat.
part?
I'll repeat my part. The WebDriver IO part, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, WebDriver IO. What I'm saying is, it is based on a similar model like Selenium, right? As you see here, what happens here is you have a test script which acts like a client, which you create using WebDriver IO provides support for only JavaScript and TypeScript, right? It does not provide you support for Ruby or I think or for Java or something, right? You can only use these languages, JavaScript or TypeScript. Okay, and what happens here is
Your voice is starting.
okay. Is it
Yes,
now better?
network is.
Just a second.
Yes.
It is better now, right?
Yeah, can we try with pausing the video? I guess the
Maybe.
data so it can be minimized.
Okay. Let me do. Okay. Am I audible as of now, guys? And is my
And
video
now
also
it is
visible, right?
correct.
Yeah, perfect, perfect.
Okay. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Then okay. I'll repeat myself for WebDriver. I hope Selenium was clear, right? When I was explaining Selenium,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay. So WebDriver IO again, right? I will repeat what happens here is in WebDriver IO, the setup looks very similar to Selenium. Okay. You have a client, you have a server, which are your drivers, right? Which are your drivers. Which are your drivers, right? So like if you wanted to work with Chrome browser, you need a Chrome driver. Okay. So the components involved in the architecture is same. The only difference between Selenium and WebDriver IO here is the communication protocol, right? Which is used in the client and the server, apart from the test library, right? So here you're using WebDriver IO test library, right, to write your code, and the communication between the test script and driver is happening through BD protocol. Okay, that's the major change. But if you see, the overall setup of the architecture is same. Okay, now in the case of WebDriver protocol, it is using this REST API, right, as a communication layer. What happens in case of this WebDriver BD? It does not use REST API. It is not using REST API. It uses WebSocket, right? And as we were discussing yesterday, right, REST API is a stateless thing, right? And this is stateful. Okay, and how WebSocket works is like, if in general, right, you have a client, you have a server, you have a client and you have a server, right? And if the what happens here is this client, first of all, right, the initial request which it sends is a REST API based. Okay, it sends a REST API based call, right? But it also sends some parameters, right, to tell server to start a bidirect a WebSocket connection. Okay, here in the REST API, when it is firing, right, it sends some parameters in the payload, right, to tell server to start a WebSocket connection. Okay, and once server agrees to it, right, it sends back, right, the response back, right, and then, right, the WebSocket connection is established, okay, from the client and the server. And now what happens is REST API is not used, the WebSocket protocol is being used, right, which is bidirectional. Client can send a request to server can send a request to the client. Okay, one of the example of WebSocket communication, right, would be like the automated bots, right? If you remember, right, if you see, right, in a lot of applications, you would see there's a chat box which is being displayed to you, right, on the top right, on the bottom right or the bottom left, right, where servers, right, of those applications starts pinging you, hey, hi Anand, where, would you like to understand something from us today, right? Would you like to buy something from us? Similar kind of thing, right? So server is initiating you, servers, those automated bots, right, are initiating your the communication with you, right? And similarly, once you send some text to it, right, it receives there, right, it is judged, and then a response comes back, and it can tell you about more things. So the model here is that it is not only the client who asks for the request, right, or for the, let's say, console services. It is the server also, right, which automatically intimate you, right, okay, that this is what we have currently, right? So it is not just the client who originates the request. No, it is a server also who can originate the request to the client. Okay, and that's why this is called bidirectional, right? From the client to the server and server to the client, and this is being used in WebDriver IO. Okay, yeah, Anand, please.
So okay, we can. Will it be correct to say that in case of WebSockets, session management is also in picture?
Right, right. See, again, as I said, right, it is stateful, right? It is stateful. So every request, right, knows about the previous request. Okay, although again I'm saying, right, I'm not an expert in WebSocket, but it is what is the difference you can understand in general, right, about REST API and WebSocket is, in REST API every call you make, right, is unique. Okay, server, because there is no tracking of the previous request, right? In the case of REST APIs, every request you send, right, should have the required parameters in it, so that server can really understand your request, right? But in case of WebSocket, since it's a stateful thing, right, there is a I'm guessing, right, that it should be how it works, that you do not have to send the same parameters again and again in the request. Okay, it is being managed at the client and the server side, so they both know about this connection being set up, and the connection is maintained. The connection is not broken. Okay, with every request being fulfilled, so it is maintained until you say, okay, I am done, close the connection. Getting it?
And is that the basis that WebDriver BD protocol is faster when compared to REST API protocol?
No, BD, see, BD is not,
Okay.
BD is not, I would say it is faster than because of this, but it is that it provides you more capabilities, right? Now on the from the browser side also. Earlier, you were the ones, right, if you wanted something, you were asking to the server again. Let's say you wanted some information from the browser, right? And you do not know when that information will come in the browser. So if you use normal WebDriver protocol, you will have to always send a request to the server. Okay, hey server, did you got that thing for me? He will say no. Okay, then again after 5 seconds you said, okay, hey server, did you got the thing for me? He will say no, I did not got, right? And you will keep asking until you get it, right? This is how things work in a BD protocol. These are like event based kind of a thing, right? You can enable some events on the server using these protocols. Okay, BD protocols. And what can happen is, the server, instead of you asking it again and again, server, you can just ask the server one, that okay server, once that things comes up, right, let me know. Now you are free, you are sitting back, and now once the things happen to the server will notify you. Okay, through our request, because you are using a WebSocket protocol. Getting it? You understanding the difference in the two? In the case of REST API, you are the one who will keep asking, right? In the case of BD protocol, right, if you are looking for a specific thing, right, you can just tell server, okay server, is the thing now available, right? Or let me know once the things becomes available. So server will keep on checking, right? And once things is made available, it will notify you. Getting it? So there's a huge difference,
Okay.
right? Okay, right. But again, this is from the WebDriver IO and Selenium part. What does happen in case of Playwright, right? So, but again, the overall architecture looks same, right? In Selenium and WebDriver IO, it's the protocol which is being changing, correct? And this is what we discussed yesterday also, right? So there is no change in this discussion, right? There is no change. This is how things have been, and I've been saying this from right now from WebDriver IO also. What there's a change, right? Is in the next part, the Playwright specifically. Okay, here, right? Okay, one more thing, one last thing about this protocol, right? About these protocols. If you see, right, Chrome driver, right? So there are three things being maintained in this framework, right? In this architecture. The library. Who has the responsibility to maintain the library? Selenium team, correct? In this architecture of Selenium, who maintains the library? It is the Selenium team responsibility, correct? Selenium team maintains the library of these languages, right, which you use to write the code. Similarly, in case of WebDriver IO, right, who has the responsibility of maintaining the library? WebDriver IO, right? They provide you the methods and the and things, right, and you just consume it and write your test script, correct? The second part, who maintains this drivers? Who has the responsibility? It is the respective team, right, of the browser, right, which you wanted to use. If you wanted to use Chrome, right, Chrome driver is coming from the Google team only. Firefox driver is coming from the Firefox team, right? So drivers are maintained by the respective browsers, right, team. So let's say Google is maintaining it. This is Selenium being maintained again. And the third component, browser. Who is maintaining the browser? Again, who? The respective teams, like Google only, right? Here Selenium is maintaining this, Google is maintaining this, Google is maintaining this. Let's say in case of WebDriver IO, the same stuff. The libraries are maintained by what? WebDriver IO team. Drivers are maintained by the respective browsers team, and the browser is anyhow maintained by the respective team only, right? So again, the Google is maintaining the Chrome and the driver part, right? So you can see who is so at in this architecture, what does WebDriver IO own? It only owns this part, right? This component, which is your test library. So they make sure that they have the proper methods and things, right? Which they have in place, which you can use to write the script. Okay, that is the whole concept, right? So this is the only thing which they maintain. But with Playwright, things are different. Okay, with Playwright, things are very different. Now let's understand the Playwright part. Okay, Playwright part. Now, how does Playwright talk? Right? Again, Playwright provides support for multi languages. Okay, so you have Java, you have Node.js. I think you have support for Ruby. I believe. If I'm let me check. I'm not sure. Let me just check. Playwright. Playwright.dev. Here in the documentation, they have the supported thing, which is supported languages. So they maintain JavaScript and TypeScript. They maintain Python, Java, and .NET. Okay, so they are providing support for these languages. Not Ruby, sorry. It's not Node.js. What it should be? TypeScript, right? TypeScript, JavaScript, TypeScript, Python, and C#. .NET, right? I think they said .NET. Yes, .NET means C#. Okay, so let me write .NET. Okay, so this is what you can use, right, as a language to write a test script. So what we have done is you install a package, right, which provides you the capability to write the script. So what happens here is you can write your test script using any of these languages. For our case, we are using TypeScript. This is your test script, okay, which we will provide. You will write your code. Now this acts like your client. Okay, this acts like your client. So again, this part is same as per the earlier architectures, right? So who is owning the library? Let me write it again. So who owns this library? It is the Playwright team, correct? The Playwright team. Now here, this is where the thing starts changing. Okay. Now, if you understand this protocol, WebDriver protocol is a standard, right, in the industry, which is used by a lot of automation tools, right? It is like a template or a guideline provided by this consortium, which is W3C. Okay, now this tool is using WebDriver BD, right? But again, this is provided by W3C, right? A guideline. It is just being implemented by these tools. With Playwright, things are different, right? So what Playwright did, right? Playwright said that, okay, I want it to be more faster, okay, and I want to break the way things have been working in the industry for almost a decade and more. Okay, so they said, okay, we will come up with something new, right? and they really came up with something new, and that is what they figured it out by themselves. Okay, and just to tell you, there is not a lot of documentation available of that insights about it, but you can dig down, right, by asking a lot of questions with Copilot, with maybe searching on the net and all that. But it is not very straightforwardly given anyway. Okay, it is like you will have to find the information in chunks and pieces and then collate it to get the whole picture, right? But now let me tell you, what is the how does the architecture look like. Now Playwright, right, is maintaining the languages. Okay, the language first of all. So this is something which is owned by Playwright. Now what Playwright did what? First of all, they are not maintaining those drivers, so there is no need of driver. Okay, no need of browser driver. Okay, so this is removed. So the middle component, right, is being removed. So there is no need of these drivers. Okay, first of all, at least those specific browser drivers, there is no need. Okay, the third component, which is the browser, right, the browser part. Now these browsers, right, they have to come from the company only, right, say Google or let's say Firefox and all, right. But they did one smart thing. They said, okay, most of the industry, right, the browsers which we have, right, are currently based, either are Chromium based browsers, right, which are like Chrome and Edge and maybe a lot of others, right, and these are prominently used. The other one is the Firefox, right, and the other one is the WebKit, which is more used for the Safari, and I think for the Apple kind of an OS, right, the OS, the browsers which are coming for that kind of a structure, right. Now they just identified it, right. So they have chosen three things: Chromium based browsers, okay, there is a Firefox based browser, and there is a WebKit based browser. Okay, these are like base kind of engines, right, browser engines, which are being maintained by these companies, right, which anyone can take up and do something on top of it or use them as is. Okay, so Chromium they got from Chrome, the Google team. Okay, they got it from Google team. Firefox from Firefox thing, and WebKit, I don't know like who's the owner of it, right? But these are coming from the respective teams, but they are, understand, right, these are based on, yeah, just a second, man. Sorry for that. Uh, okay. Am I audible now, Anand?
Yes, now it's again
Okay.
better.
I'll have to fix my system today. I'll do that part. Okay. Yeah. So what I was saying, right? I'm saying the browser component, right, which is the last part. What Playwright does here is, right, Playwright said it, okay, these are the three different kind of families of browsers which are being used extensively. So what they did was they took the baselines of these, right, from the respective teams. Okay, so let's say the version of the baseline is B1, let's say F1, right, and let's say W1, right, let's say C1, right, C1, F1 and W1, right. So these are like baseline ones. Now they took these browsers, right, and they did not provide them as is, right. What they did was they took these browsers and added some extra support in these browsers, some extra thing, right, some delta things here also, and here also, right, they added something delta, right, and then they got a new browser version, right, for these things, and these are like something which is maintained by Playwright team now. Okay, so Playwright team now has a new version on top of the baseline, and this delta they added to have some extra features in these browsers. Okay, some extra capabilities, right. So now let me say, right, the browser which you will get in Chromium, right, for this is coming. So let me give a new version, right, let's say PC1, PF1, right, and PW1. Okay, so these are the versions of the browser you have. Now, who is maintaining these browsers? These browsers are maintained by the Playwright team, not the respective browser teams. No, they just provided the baseline. What Playwright did was they added some delta things, right, to these browsers, and you got these versions, right? Now, coming back to the question, right, in our setup, right, in this architecture thing, what is happening is the library to write a test script is maintained by Playwright. Playwright is the owner. The last component where the automation will really happen, right, which are these browsers. So now who is owning them? Playwright team. So you can see, you can have, if you want to do, once you work with Playwright, right, you also install browsers, Chromium based, Firefox based, and WebKit. Okay, so you install these browsers, but from where these browsers are coming? These are not coming from here. These are coming with these versions, the ones which are being modified by the Playwright team and maintained by the team. And once you say install, right, they go to these directories, right, on the from the Playwright side and download them and make them available in your system. And this is what you get when I was showing yesterday also in this directory. Let me just quickly show that part. Where is it? Where is it? C drive. Stop. Not this one. Sorry. C drive. This user app data local MS Playwright, right? So this is, if you see, right, Playwright, when we installed Playwright on day one, right, we did one step called Playwright install, right? What it did was it brought down these versions of the browsers, right, to my system. But from where these are coming? These are coming from the Playwright team side, right? These are the modified browsers, right, provided to you by Playwright team. They have the extra capabilities within them, right? These are not the baseline ones. Okay, so these are coming from where? From the Playwright team. Okay, these ones. And this is a huge difference from the earlier setup. The earlier setup, right? If you look at in the earlier case, right, these browsers which you were using, right, were directly coming from the respective teams. But here, if you see, right, at least these Chromium, Firefox, and WebKit, these are coming from the Playwright team. Okay, now, and they have some superpower within them, which is this delta, right? Okay, now the question arises, why this delta, right? So again, let me just say it again. The library is maintained by the Playwright team, and the browsers are also maintained by the Playwright team. So both the things are maintained by the Playwright team. Okay, great. Now coming to the third, and the reason we have to understand what is this delta which they are adding, which is giving some superpowers to them. Okay, we'll discuss about it. The third thing, right, the communication. How this, if you see, right, this was the first component in the earlier architecture, like this, and this is the third component, the browser side, which is the third part, right? The third part. Do we have the second part in this setup? Let's first answer that query, right? For the naked eyes, it is not there. Okay, if you try to see it, you will not see it, the second component anywhere. Okay, it is hidden. It is hidden and not exposed. But in reality, there is a second component, and this is where the difference is coming from our yesterday session. Okay, I found that there is a server involved. Okay, there is a server involved called, and the name of the server is Playwright server. Okay, this server is involved. Now again, if you see, right, it's this, it looks like a similar setup. It looks like a similar setup. You have a browser, but the change here is these browsers are having some superpowers given by Playwright, and these browsers are maintained by the Playwright team. Okay, and there is another shift that we have a second component in between, which is called as Playwright server. Okay, but the point here is you will never see this server, right, at least in the Node.js setup, you will never see that. But what happens here is the communication happens, right? How communication happens? You, once you wrote the script, right, and you start triggering the script, what happens here is it connects with this Playwright server, right, and then this Playwright server, right, does this part based on the browser you want to work on it, right? It knows it has these browsers with them, right? It spins up the browser, right, and connects to that browser and does all the stuff, right? Now, because of this part, right, because there's a central server somewhere, you get unified way of communicating with the browsers. So let me write it here: unified API, right, being used to communicate from the server to these browsers. Okay, this is one thing. And what happens here? What happens here? This layer. We'll talk about this part also. Okay, I'm going to talk about this, but let's understand one more part. Now, the last part in this architecture, which is remaining, is how this your client and your server are interacting. What is the protocol being used? Now, yesterday, when I was saying, right, I was saying that this client was talking to browser directly. First of all, that is not correct. Okay, there is a Playwright server involved, but again, I will say, right, you will not visibly see it. In case of Selenium and WebDriver IO, you see that you start up the Selenium grid, right? So there is a server involved, right, which you can see. But in case of Playwright, this is hidden from you. You cannot see these servers, right? When I run my Playwright script, it just starts doing things, right? And in the process, in the background, it starts the server first, right? And then that server, right, knows the location of your these browsers. And now the responsibility of the server is to connect to the respective browser and do that automation part, right? And this Playwright server is very powerful. Okay, right? There is a lot of capabilities within it, but again, these are all hidden from you. You will never see any server being running, right? You cannot access it. You cannot access this server now, and that's why that confusion came, right? Okay, one thing. The second part, how these client and this server is communicating. In the case of Selenium, it was using WebDriver protocol. In case of WebDriver IO, it was using W3C BD protocol, WebDriver BD protocol, bidirectional protocol. What protocol is being used? We do not use WebDriver protocol, not used. We do not use WebDriver BD protocol. So those are out of the park now, right? So what do we have here? Playwright team came up with their own protocol. Okay, Playwright team came up with their own protocol. Okay, and they called that protocol as Playwright protocol, right? Playwright protocol. Playwright protocol. Okay, Playwright protocol. So they created this protocol from scratch. Okay, and that is in-house for them, right? Again, there is very less documentation available on this protocol, right? I tried to find it, I could not find it as of now. If I have the link, if I get something, I'll share it with you, right? But there is very less documentation on it. Now, this Playwright protocol, right? What communication way it is using? Is it using REST API or is it using WebSocket? The answer to that question is it uses WebSocket. So it is bidirectional. It is bidirectional. Okay. So again, you have the communication here, right, being used as Playwright protocol, and this is bidirectional, right? And the way it connects, right, is through WebSocket, not through REST API. Okay, WebSocket, the way we discussed here, right? Initially, the client sends a REST API call, right? It sends some parameters within the payload. Once servers understands it, it opens the connection for WebSocket and say okay. And then once the connection is set up, right, that connection is maintained. It is not getting closed with every request call like in REST APIs. So that connection is maintained, and now clients can send a call to the server, and the server can also send a call to the server to the client. It is bidirectional. Okay, so this Playwright protocol is being used. Now the last part. Okay, the last part. Okay, first of all, you can ask me like, Akhil, what does this protocol is based on? Is it like similar to CDP? CDP is a Chrome DevTools protocol. I told you, right, there are three different protocols, right, which is maintained by these respective browsers in their either, I mean, on their side. One is CDP, FDP, let's say WDP, right, WebKit DevTools protocol. So there are different native technologies being used by the browsers, right, for their internal communication between different services, right? Does this Playwright protocol uses these? In a way, I would say it is these protocols, right, have came into the picture, into the existence based on these. Okay, based on these only. Okay, because these are also based on WebSocket. Okay, these are also based on WebSocket. These are bidirectional communication which happens. So I would say the inspiration The inspiration taken by the Playwright protocol is from these kind of protocols, right, which are made available as a native technology between those browsers. But will it be right to say that Playwright protocol is using CDP internally? The answer is no. No, they are not using CDP, FDP, or WDP. They have written their own Playwright protocol, right, which is created based on the lines of these protocols. But the answer to say that whether are they using this, no, the answer is they are not using this. Okay, but it is inferred, right, or the inspiration is taken from them, right? So this Playwright protocol is a new thing. It's totally a new thing, right, given to us. Okay, now what next, right? Now the one more thing, right, the last part which is pending here is, what is this delta? Why do we need this delta, right? Now the delta is needed here. See, Playwright is very fast. Playwright, the way it works with the browser, right, it is very fast. If you compare your execution speed with WebDriver IO or maybe with Selenium, right, or maybe some other tools, you would find that Playwright is much faster. What is the reason of being faster? The reason of being faster is that they have modified the baseline browser, right, and they have a new versions of it, right, which they are maintaining themselves. And this delta thing, right, which they have added these things to the browsers to make sure that the Playwright protocol which they have in place, right, is able to do something extra on the browser, right? So these delta, this extra thing, right, which these baseline browsers have, are there to help this protocol, right, function in a better way, okay, and in a speedier way, and have some more capabilities. Getting it? So that's why you have these delta things. So why are these there? Because to get the extra thing, right, which this protocol can do for you, okay, and this makes the things very very easy, right, or very super fast for this case. Now if you see, right, this is what the architecture is. One last part to this is, if you see, right, there's a Playwright protocol being used, which is WebSocket, which is bidirectional, which is correct, and you have this Playwright server. Now let's understand this portion now, right? I am saying this Playwright server has a unified API, okay, unified API which is used across, whether you use Chromium browser, whether you use Firefox, or whether you use WebKit, right? I am saying this is unified API. In case of this architecture, the earlier architecture, right, if you wanted to work with Chrome, right, what was happening was the communication between the driver and the browser, right, was based on the native technology, which was CDP in case of this part. In case of Firefox, it could be, let's say, FDP, I don't know, right, FDP, or in case of WebKit, it could be WDP, right, WDP, right? Now what happens here, right, because of this part, there are three different things involved, and this tool has nothing in control of these things, right? Now these protocols can work at their own speed, right, and for every different browser there is a new native technology which needs to be maintained. Okay, now what Playwright team did, right, they said, okay, this is a trouble area, right, and this is something which slows us down, okay, which slows us down. Right? So what they said, okay, let us create a unified API, right, a unified API which will interact from our server to the respective modified browsers, okay, or maybe to other browsers also, right? But we will have a unified API. We will not use these native technologies. We will not use them. We will use our own things, right, which we have developed. And because of this, right, they came up, they built it up, right, and they came up with a single API, okay, a single unified API, which is capable, right, to have the communication between the server, the Playwright server, and the respective browsers. So now, if you have a Chromium browser, they are using the same APIs, okay, to communicate with the server and the browsers. Similarly, for the Firefox, and similarly for the WebKit, they are not dependent on the native technologies. Getting it? And this is another thing, right? This is another thing which is helping, which because of which this delta thing has been added, to have the support of these unified APIs, right? Now what happens here, right? If you see, there is one single protocol, right, being maintained by the, so if now see at the whole component, right, the whole architecture. Playwright team, right, manages your test library. Okay, it manages that. Playwright team owns this Playwright protocol. So again, built in-house. Okay. Third thing, this Playwright server is also maintained by the Playwright team. The fourth thing, this unified API is also maintained by the Playwright team. The fifth thing, the browser, right? This is also maintained by the Playwright team. If you see, everything is owned by Playwright. Okay. And this is what makes things faster here, because now everything is built in-house and everything is built from scratch, right? So what is happening here is they have created a architecture, right, which is seamless, right, which is seamless, and there is no, and they have identified all the pitfalls and removed them, right? And this is because this is seamless, the technology is not transferring from one component to other and the other, right? Every communication is happening in the Playwright thing, right? And that may brings, right, the speed, that brings the execution in a more efficient way, right? And you are removing all the third party things, right, from your entire architecture, right? And this is what the protocol, this is what the architecture of Playwright looks like, right? But again, I will say, right, for you or for me as a user, right, you will always see only this part, the client part, and at max you will see these parts, right? This part, this part, and this part is hidden from you, right? It is not exposed to you, but this is in place and this is being used to have the entire architecture being created and being used. And this is what I missed yesterday, so I thought it is better to do the redo the things and explain it again. Now please, if you have any queries, please ask. Anyone? I hope I'm audible, right?
Yes, 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 you are.
Okay.
But yeah, no questions.
Okay.
Yes, no questions.
Okay, Harsh, since you are coming from Playwright, right? I hope if you can add some points to it, or this is what you also know
No,
about
sir.
Playwright.
This is very much detailed, so because I have never heard about Playwright server, and
Okay.
today only I got to know. And I was just searching the internet because whenever I searched about Playwright architecture or framework, so Playwright server I have never seen there.
Uh,
So right now I'm also searching for it.
you will never, you see, you will never see it, right? But
Yes, sir.
if you see this documentation, right? As I said, right? I don't know why, but this is not very well explained in these or being documented in these guidelines. I don't know why. Okay, but I went to Copilot and did some research, right, and tried to find some answers. So if you would see, right, let me show you, right? And I think that is Copilot is a blessing for me, at least, right? I get a lot of answers from it, but the problem here is that you will have to ask questions. Only then it can provide the answer. Okay, see here, right? If you ask him, right, explain me the Playwright architecture, let's say architecture and all the components involved in it. Let's understand. Does it give it? And whatever information it gives, right? You have, okay, it starts explaining the features of it. No, no, I don't need this. What I need is uh, explain me, explain me about okay, show me stepwise stepwise process process how test script in in playwright communicate with the browser, including the Playwright server and Playwright protocol being used. Let's see what does it give. Okay, so if you see, right, test script execution, right, you create your test script in Playwright, right? Then that is called as your client. Okay, then you have a WebSocket connection, right? And this is called as establish a WebSocket connection with the Playwright. So it is not telling that it's a protocol. If you see, right, there's a Playwright server being involved, right? There is a Playwright protocol which is being used, right? If you see, right, the server communicates to the browser using the Playwright protocol, which is based on the Chrome DevTools protocols for Chromium and similar protocols for other browsers. But it is not the same thing. It is something additional, right? I would again say, right, nowhere in the official documentation they are saying that at least as of now that it is based on CDP. No, they are saying that we used to do it, but now we have our own protocol, which is Playwright protocol, and it is not an extension of CDP. It is I would say uh, it is influenced, right? It is influenced from it, but it is not CDP, right? That is what they're saying. And then the browser interactions, right? Okay, Playwright server acts as an intermediate that translates the command received from the client into browser specific instructions, compatibility across different browsers, right? And the last part here is the browser interaction, right? The browser executes the instruction received from the Playwright server, right? So this is what it does, and then it responds back to the client. How things works in a backward channel, right? But the another point to understand here is the who is maintaining the browser. I showed you, right? These are the browsers being maintained. Okay, but again, if you see, right, this is Chromium based, this is Firefox, this is WebKit, this is WinID, and this is FFM. I don't know what that is. The last part, I mean, what I wanted to add more is, let's say, if you see, right, we do not have Chrome browsers. We do not have Chrome browser. We do not have Edge browser here, right? So what Playwright did, right? They just modified these browsers, okay? Chromium, Firefox, WebKit, and all that. They did not modify Chrome, or they did not modify the Edge browsers, right? If you wanted to work on them, right, it is your responsibility still to download them, to have it on your system, right? Right? And what Playwright team does is they said, okay, at least for the Chrome, and the Firefox, what we will do is we have not modified, sorry, not for the Firefox, Edge. We will not modify them. We will use them as is, right? But our APIs, right? Our protocol and APIs are, see, they are calling this part also and this part also as Playwright protocol only, right? So you might find the terms being used interchange and all, but this is what they use. But coming back to this, right? For this Chrome and the Edge part, right? They do not have this part, so they use the ones coming from the providers directly, right? Like the Chrome and the Microsoft team, right? Microsoft team, and they use them as is. But they have created this unified API, right, in such a way that at least it is able to communicate with these two browsers, I mean, seamlessly. Okay, for that they have not added any delta thing. Okay, so for the Chrome and Microsoft, they are still using these new unified APIs, and they are capable enough to deal with these browsers directly. They do not need some delta things to it. But for the other browsers, they have added a lot of things, and then you can use it. Okay, so this is the entire setup which we have, and I will tell you, right, there is not a lot of documentation available on the Playwright side. At least I could not find it as of now. If I find it, I will share, right? But this is what the architecture looks like. Okay. Okay, great, right? I hope this is clear, right? Okay, moving ahead. Okay, this is the architecture part. Moving ahead. After this, right, we discussed we were discussing about I have to discuss about three things. Okay, let me do one the thing. Let me start up the thing over here. All just a second. Terminal, new terminal. Like yeah, right. So let me just do one thing. Git add changes. Git checkout day one. So this is what our code look like. Okay, let me just remove this part. So if you look at it, right, this is what we got on day one, right, of the Playwright. Right, this is what we got on the Playwright site on day one. This is what the structure is. Now over here, right, this is our conf file, right? This is our conf file, and okay, let me try to write it here, right? Okay, I hope I'm audible, right? There is no lag here. And I'm audible, right? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. You are.
Okay, here, right? See, now we know about the architecture, right? How Playwright works, right? But how things starts, right? How things starts. What is the sequence of things, right? That it works, functions. First of all, understand our setup, right? We did what? We have the intention of using TypeScript as a language with Playwright. Okay. And what we did was we created a project, right? Using these commands. Getting started installation, right? What we did was we used this command npm init playwright @latest, right? And what it did was it started installing Playwright on my system, and it was like an installer. So it asked me a couple of questions, and then when I provide the answer, it gave me a setup of the project which looked like this, right? Okay, this is what it gave me. Now if you, again coming back to the installer, the one thing which I want to focus on is it asked me which language I want to use, whether you want to use TypeScript or JavaScript, right? So we decided to use TypeScript, right? We decided to use TypeScript. So we are using TypeScript here, right? And accordingly, it gave me a setup of the project accordingly, right? So we are using TypeScript here. Now we know how TypeScript and JavaScript work, right? TypeScript gets compiled to JavaScript, and JavaScript is the ultimate thing which gets executed on a Node.js environment. Okay. Now, so this gets converted to JavaScript, to JavaScript, to JavaScript, and then this JavaScript, right, runs on the Node.js environment, right? Node.js environment. So what we need is, as a setup, we need Node.js on our system. We need this, okay? We need this. Once we have Node.js, right, you need npm along with it. Once you have them, right, you will have to do that npx init playwright latest, right? And this does what? It starts an installer, right, which asks you a couple of queries. You provide the answers to them. You choose the language here. So I decided to use TypeScript, and it came up with a setup which looks like this. Now here, right, what after? So what did you got in the setup? You got a test folder, a test example folder, which are just an example files, right, for you to start with. But I want to focus on two important files. You have package.json and you get playwright.config.ts. Okay, these are the two important files which you got. So as part of your setup creation, right, three things happened. Three things really happened. One, the language was chosen, which is TypeScript, which was TypeScript. The language was chosen, right? Second thing, you got a package.json file. Package.json, right? What you will have to see is the dependency which it added. Let us see the dependency. If you look at the dependency here, you have these two things being added to it, okay, by that setup. And there is only one thing specifically for Playwright, which is this one, Playwright test @Playwright _/test. Okay. So the dependency which it added was @Playwright and test. This is like a library, right, which does almost everything for the Playwright. Okay. And if just let me just show this part, npm Playwright test. Okay. npm Playwright test. Playwright is a framework for web automation and all, but does it explain like what is this? Uh, okay, so it gives you, it's, see, again, the documentation is not very verbal. What I would say is, this is this is the library, right, which helps you to do everything with Playwright as a test runner, right? And when I say test runner, test runners gives you all the capabilities to design your test case, to run them, right, to see the report, and it has the setup to have that worker node concept and all, right? And this is all done through this library. So this is the most important library which we need under the Playwright umbrella. Okay, so this is very important. We need to have this, right? And this is what will do entire thing for us, right, in our execution system. The third thing, if you look at there, once you have this library and all, right, how Playwright works. Playwright needs a trigger, right? It needs a trigger to execute. It needs, and to trigger it, right, what they have is, you have a similar concept as compared to WebDriver.io. You have one starting file, and that file name is playwright conf.ts. Why ts? Because you choose language as TypeScript, right? A ts file. This is a configuration file. This is the configuration file for the test runner, right? For the Playwright. Whatever you define under these conf file, right, accordingly the execution will take place. And this file is very similar to WebDriver.io conf file. Okay, there is again, although these are, since these are coming from two different tools, so the fields would be different, the keys used would be different, but the overall understanding, right, which you can drive from your WebDriver discussion is that they are serving the same purpose. They are giving the configuration inputs to the Playwright, at least in this part, right, to the Playwright, so that it can behave accordingly. You tell what test cases to run. You tell how many worker threads you need, right? You tell them on which browser you want to work on. So all of that information and more, right, is residing under this file, right? And this is, yeah, this is your starting point, right, from which things will trigger, right? So what happens here is, somehow you need to trigger this file. You need to trigger this file, right? You need to somehow trigger this file, and from here, right, the execution will start, right? Now this is what it is. Now after this part, right, what we need is, and how do we do it? We do something like this. We say npx, and okay, what is npx? Does anyone remember what is npx? Kiran, if you know this, what is npx?
It is for running
Execution of command.
It is for,
running scripts in TypeScript.
okay. Tejaswari, you want to answer something? Yeah, please.
Yes, Akhil. So it is same as npm, but it install the packages directly from the repository.
Absolutely correct,
Not,
right? Absolutely correct,
yeah.
right? So it is like, if you want to run something, right, directly from somewhere, right, what you can do is, or from the npm repository without downloading it, you can just
Mhm.
trigger using npx, right? It still gets it, right? It still tries to download it, but it keeps it in a temporary folder somewhere, right? And from there it executes. So it does not add that file to your node module folder, right? You do not, it does not add, but
Yes.
it just executes. Okay, one more thing which I missed here is, this library, right, which you downloaded as a dependency, these are placed where? These are placed under the node module folder, right? So you do have a node module folder. So if you see this here, you have a node module folder, and here you have this Playwright, within which you will see the test part. Where is this? This Playwright test only, right? So this is what these are coming from, right? Right? Okay, coming back. How do you start triggering of a test case? What you write is, you write something like this. You say npx Playwright, and then you say test. Okay, you run in this way, Playwright test. Now let us look at the package.json file. If you see, there is no script as of now. There is no script as of now, right? I have not added any script. I have not added any script. If you compare this discussion with WebDriver.io, you would find, in the case of WebDriver.io, I was always having some scripts, right? And I was triggering the script through what command? I was saying npm run and the script name, correct? And that was initiating our execution. Remember? Anand, Kiran, right? At least you were there, right?
Yes.
So you understand
Yes.
that part. Here you can
Right.
see this is blank. I do not have a script as of now, but still, if I am able to run my scripts. Why? Because I'm running it from this part. I'm saying npx playwright test. Right now, what happens here is npx is again it will go to the npm directory, right? Find playwright there, right? And then it will use that library from there, and then you say test, right? Now, what happens here is this is the default way of executing things, right, in playwright. Okay, see, a lot of things in playwright, right, have been sugar coated, have been there's no lot of documentation provided for them, and those a lot of things are hidden from everyone. Okay, now, to understand exactly how things works, if someone is interested, they can go back and deep down in a lot of things. But just to I mean, just to understand the flow of the execution, I would just say, just understand here, right? What happens here is Playwright is a library on npm folder, right? And what happens here is there must be some utility within the Playwright with the name of test, right? And what does test do is it goes and find this file, right, which we have in our setup in the root directory, and it tries to go and trigger it, right? That is what it does. For this to run, right, you do not need to add this to a script till now. We will see when the day will come, right? We will add something to the script and see how to execute things. But as of now, we will use this default way, right? How things are working. Okay, npx playwright test. This is how you trigger your playwright through this command. It does what? It goes to this file, right? It starts a test runner, and for the test runner, this file is required as an input, which has all the configuration inputs for playwright, right? If you look in the playwright conf file, now see here you have something called projects, right? You can understand projects like a test up. Okay, first of all, you can see it's an array, right? This is one object, this is second object, this is third object. So it's an array of objects, and one object here, right, represents your one test environment setup. Okay, so you are telling here that your entire playwright execution can happen on these environments, on these four different environments. One is this, second is this, and third is this. Okay, only three, right? Three. Do we have a fourth one? No, we have three environment setups, right? And we will understand this more. Okay, maybe if not today, maybe tomorrow, right? But these are three different environments. If you see here, right, it is saying chromium, and you see something like this. It might look like weird, but we'll drill it down. Okay, but in a nutshell, I can just say here we are saying go and run on a chromium browser, go and run on a Firefox browser, and go and run on a WebKit browser. And if you remember, we already got these browsers from Playwright team, and they are placed here. So these are the browsers which will be used to do the execution. But we have to notify Playwright, let go and run on them, right? That's why they have to be added here. If you do not want it to run on Firefox and WebKit, just remove them from here. Okay, right? This is one thing. So this here in this file we are telling on which environment to run things. Okay, and we can provide more information here. We'll drill it down. One more important thing which you should understand is this test directory, at least to start with, right? Here we are telling where is our test placed. Okay, we are giving the directory path to it. So you can see there's a folder called test, and we are giving a path, and there is one file there, example.spec.ts. If I run my script, my playwright now, right, it will go under this directory. Whatever test it finds, it will go and start triggering them. You will see there are two test cases. One is this one, and other is this one. So it will trigger both the test cases, right? But against which environments? Three different environments, which are these: Chromium, Firefox, and WebKit. So what is happening here is you will find yourself that once you trigger this, it will do what? It will start three worker threads: worker 1, worker 2, and worker 3, right? So this worker 1, right, will run for the test environment Chromium. This will run for Firefox. This will run for the third one, which is WebKit, right? And you have all these browsers with you. They will start the execution. They will run. What they will do is they will first, you have only one test file, right? Test file 1. It will go and run it. And within the test file, you have two test cases: test case 1, test case 2. So you can see there is a single session for Chromium. As of now, it will get triggered It found only one file, so it will take that file and run these test cases in sequence. The same thing will happen for the Firefox, same thing will happen for the WebKit, but these three things are running parallel, okay? By default, in Playwright, everything runs in parallel. So they are like parallel first. They use that approach of parallel first, okay? They want to minimize their execution time to the maximum extent, right? Whatever they can achieve. So you can see how they are running things, right? So they run things in parallel mode. Now, who maintains these worker nodes? Whose responsibility is this? Again, this is the responsibility of the Playwright test runner. Okay, Playwright, because of all these things, right? Playwright is a very powerful tool. Okay, and this is what is bringing. I mean, again, hey, right? If you see in Playwright again, you do not have to care about session management. Okay, or at least these workers. We'll talk about session management afterwards, but let's just talk about the workers, right? So Playwright is spinning up or providing you the threads, right, or the processes which can help you to run things in parallel. If you compare this to Selenium, there, right, the capability was provided. Either you will have to design it yourself or you will have to use TestNG for it, a third party thing, okay, to have that kind of a setup. But here in Playwright, it is inbuilt, okay, it is inbuilt, which you can just use. Okay, more on it in the later classes, but let's go back to our conf file again. We'll just understand one or two things here, right? So this is the different test environments. This is the test directory. And as of now, just understand, you define the configuration through it, right? And you can see from where this is coming. This is coming from the Playwright test library, right? Which we had. Okay. One last thing. We are running a TypeScript code. This is a TS file, right? All our test cases are written using TS thing. But if you see, there is one file missing here. Which is that file? Which has not been provided by Playwright? Which is required for TypeScript?
TSConfig.
TSConfig.json, right? It is not here. It is not provided here by Playwright. And that is one important thing which I really wanted to highlight. So Harsh, you are using which language in Playwright currently in your team?
JavaScript.
Using JavaScript. Okay. So for you, that file does not matter, right? TSConfig.json. Okay.
Yes, but sir, I think there is one command, CLI command.
Hmm.
Not sure about this normal, but if you install Playwright with Cucumber and TypeScript, so I think there is one file created as tsconfig.
Okay. 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 How do you create your use? Okay. Tell me about your setup. What you're using? You're using Playwright. You're using it with the language of JavaScript. You're
Yes,
using
sir.
Cucumber.
Yes, sir.
You're using Cucumber. Okay. What else are you using for reporting? What are you using?
Cucumber HTML reporting
Okay, HTML
currently.
report. Cucumber HTML or the Playwright HTML reporting?
No, sir. Cucumber HTML.
Okay, Cucumber HTML reporting. Okay, the reporting provided by Cucumber, right, as an HTML file. Okay,
Yes.
okay, and JS Cucumber HTML. Okay, and which browsers do you use to execute?
Chromium browsers. We basically, if we want, we can change, but the business requirement is for Chrome only, so we test on that browser only.
Chrome or Chromium?
Chrome. It is Chromium based, so is it
No,
correct?
no. The problem here is the Chromium browsers are maintained by Playwright, and if you use them, you do not need to install them specifically, right? They will
Yes, sir.
come with Playwright. But if you have the intention to work with Chrome, that becomes your responsibility, and you will have to download them. So you're using Chrome or the Chromium ones?
Chromium ones.
So you're using Chromium ones. Okay. So for okay, got it. Okay, so using the setup. Understood. Okay, thank you. Okay, coming back to our discussion, right? We are using TypeScript as a language, right? Now, if we know this, right, from our concept of TypeScript learning, we know that how TypeScript works. TypeScript has to be compiled to JavaScript, right? And this compilation of TypeScript to JavaScript, right, is controlled through a file called tsconfig.json, correct? Now, whatever you specify under this configuration file of TypeScript, right? Accordingly, the JavaScript code gets generated, right? Which gets executed on the Node.js environment. We understand this part, right? Everyone?
Yes.
Right? Okay. The last thing, first of all, when you created the Playwright setup with TypeScript, it does not include this file. So TSConfig file is not included. Okay, and there is a purpose. There is a reasoning, right, that is not provided. But if you wanted to have that file, what you can do is you can just run normally. I think the command there is you can run npm tsc, or just you can just run tsc and init. Once you do this, right, it will create a default configuration file for you, tsconfig.json, which you can have. But what I want to convey here is that it is not required. It is not required. We'll see if you need it, we will add it. Okay, but what I will say is in our setup it is not required. It is not required. Why? The reasoning here is because the compilation of the TypeScript to JavaScript is again managed by Playwright team. Okay, they have an compilation, right, which happens from TypeScript to JavaScript, right? And there is a default configuration file, right, which is used by Playwright to do that conversion. Okay, and it serves in almost every case, right? So you will find yourself that you do not need to add such a file for your case. Okay, for the Playwright thing. If there would be a we will as of now this is not required. And just to make sure that you understand this part, if you want to this is the thing. If you go to the Playwright test, there is something called TypeScript. Go here and you can say Playwright supports TypeScript out of the box. You just write test in TypeScript and Playwright will read them, transform to JavaScript and run. Right? You do not need to have TSConfig.json. Playwright will tee up for this node that only supports. Okay. Now, since I'm saying, right, Playwright has an inbuilt support for TypeScript, right? You do not require this file, okay? But still, if you wanted to have it, right, there are only 4 parameters which are supported by this Playwright tool on the TSConfig, which are these: allow.js, base URL, path, and references. These are the 4 fields which you can set up in TSConfig file, and it can have an impact on the execution. If you set up any other field in the TSConfig, right, you can have them, you can add them, but it will have no impact on your Playwright execution. You're understanding, right? So what Playwright does is Playwright uses its own mechanism, its own way of executing TypeScript, right, which it has inbuilt, right? So since all of that is already taken care of, right, there is no need for you to add this file. Okay, the default configuration. So you can understand in this way, right, that Playwright, although it does not show you, right, you can understand that there is a tsconfig.json maintained by Playwright team. It is there. It is there, right? It is there. The Playwright team is providing you this tsconfig file, right? But it is not displayed to you. It is not displayed to you. It is managed internally, right? And it has some configurations already set up, right? And what they're also saying is that we will not allow you to change them. We will only allow you only a couple of fields, right, to be modified. And if you want to modify them, what you can do is go and add a file here. Let me add a file, right? What you can do is you can just say tsc init. If you do this, right, you will see a tsconfig file being generated. If you wanted to add some things to it, right, you can just see, you can see there are so many parameters which you could set, but none of it will take effect. None of it will take effect. Only 4 fields are allowed to be changed. What are those? These are these ones. These are these ones, right? Note that Playwright only supports the following tsconfig options: allow.js, base URL, path, and references. If you set something else in the tsconfig, in your own tsconfig, it will have no impact. Okay. Now, okay, let's understand one last thing about it, right? The last thing about it is that this tsconfig file, right? See, why do you want to have them? First of all, that so that the compilation can happen from TypeScript to JavaScript, right? Okay, TypeScript to JavaScript. And now what matters is, do you really want to see these files, the generated JavaScript files, right? If yes, why? If yes, why, right? If your if by not seeing them, by not physically seeing them, if it still is able to serve your purpose, right? At least I am good with it, right? I do not need JavaScript files, right, to see them, so that to understand whether the execution is happening or not. But in some cases, right, it might be needed. Maybe someone wants have written a framework in TypeScript. They wanted to generate JavaScript files, maybe take those JavaScript files and place it somewhere else and run them. Maybe someone has that intention. If that is the intention, right, if that is the intention, the recommended approach is, please add your TSConfig file. Please add your TSConfig file, add all the parameters which you want to add to that file, and then run the TSC command. As soon as you will do TSC, right, it will do what? It will compile your TypeScript code based on this file and generate you the JavaScript code. Correct? You will have that JavaScript code, and if you want them, you can just take it away and use them, right? But let me tell you, right, for Playwright with TypeScript, right, it will not use that code. It will not use that code. It will generate the TypeScript code in memory, the JavaScript code, compilation code in memory, right, using its own TSConfig file, and then run that. Okay, so if you even use this and generate some code through TSC and generate some files, it has no, it is of no use for you, at least in the Playwright with TypeScript concept. Let me show you. Yeah, Harsh, please.
So when we execute Playwright code in TypeScript, so it temporarily generates the JavaScript files and executes the code and then deletes it.
Yes, it is all in memory.
Okay.
It is all in memory, right? And again, I'm saying the generation of those files are happening based on the configuration file, which is again managed by the Playwright team. Getting it? You do not need this kind of a file
Yes, sir.
specifically from your side. But let's say I have that need. Let's say I have a need. I really want to see the JavaScript code which can be generated from this part. Maybe for some reasons, right? I don't know what reasons, but there could be some reason. What you can do is you can create your file according to whatever things you need, right? And what you can do is, all right, let me do one thing. Let's just add this out directory. Out directory, right? So let me do one thing. Out directory. I will create an out directory called test output. Let's say, okay, test output. Okay, test output. And what we'll do is we will just tsconfig test output, right? Let us go and run it, right? See, what I will do now is I have a tsconfig file. I'll just say tsc now. Okay. Now, in the normal execution of Playwright, I will never do it. I will never do this part. Okay. There is no need for me to do this. npx Playwright test does this part for me, right? npx Playwright test this part, right? It compiles your TypeScript code. It compiles your TypeScript code, right? Generates the JS files, right? Internally in the memory using some reference config file within it, and then use those files to run the execution. Okay, right? That is what it does. But what I'm saying, what I'm showing you right now is, if you have the intention of generating the code based on this configuration file, you will have to do TSC now. If you do it, let's see what happens. I hope I have given the right path of the folder. Let us see. If you see, right, there's a test output folder generated, and here you will find your conf file, right? And these JS files, right, are generated based on this conf file. But what I'm saying here is these are of no use to you. Why? Because Playwright will not use them to do the execution. It will still, if you do that command, right, npx Playwright test, it will still go ahead and run the execution, take these TypeScript files, generate the JavaScript code based on its own configuration file of the tsconfig, and then run it in memory. Okay, so it is of no use for you. So please avoid doing TSC, at least in the TypeScript code, at least here, right, until unless you have a specific case to generate it. Okay, so in our execution, I will not be doing a TSC, right? We will see if there would be a need. I will notify there, but as of now, I will not use it. You're getting the point, right, everyone? See,
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
let me just remove this folder and show you that things really work without generating the TS file, right? So I'm removing this file also. See here, I'm removing this. Okay, so this is what your code is looks like. And let me just narrow down our execution to a couple of things only. So this is test. We'll talk about, right, what is skip and all that. So this is how you skip a test case here. And what I was saying, I will run it only on one environment as of now, right? Just to make things simple for us, I'll run it on Chromium. So let me just comment all this. So okay, and we will just trigger it. How to trigger it? Just write npx playwright test. Npx playwright test. And yeah, Harsh, please.
Sir, can you please click on that flask icon, sir, which is in the leftmost corner?
This one, the testing part.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
this is okay. How did I got this?
From Playwright, I guess.
Right.
But I can, sir, why is it okay? Yeah, test folder, it is there.
I think it is an extension in the
Hmm.
Playwright.
Right.
Yes.
It's an
So if
extension.
you want, yes, sir. I think this is for just executing if you want single test case.
Okay. See, it first of all, we will delve into it. Okay, into one of I will place one specific session for this extension only. If you see, right, there is a playwright. This part also here, right, available here. There is a new tab which is available here. Why these are coming up? These are coming up because I added an extension from the playwright team on the website for the web visual code. Okay, and because of that, this is coming up, and it provides a lot of capabilities inside the editor itself. Okay, and it requires its own session, so we'll discuss all that part over there. But yes, it came from Visual Studio. This is added as part of the extension, and it came from Playwright team, and you can find it on the website of Playwright. Okay, Harsh?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
now see this, right? Yeah, please, yeah.
Also, when we are installing Playwright, the VS Code is automatically suggesting to download this extension. I
Yes,
also
yes,
tried that.
absolutely good. See, Playwright is a product of Microsoft. Visual Studio Code is a product of Microsoft, right? So they both understand each other very well. Correct? And the same team, the Microsoft, right, is providing both the things. So they made sure that they know that people will use Visual Studio Code only to write their code in TypeScript or JavaScript if they want to work with Playwright. So they made an extension specifically for Visual Studio Code, right, to promote that part. Okay. Yeah, Harsh, no worries. Okay, what I was saying, you can see in our execution now, right? When I ran that file, when I ran that command, right, this npx playwright test, you can see it did not generated the JS file, right? You can see no JS file was generated. It is all TypeScript code, right, as of now. So, but still the execution happened. Why? It happened because the transpilation, right, of TypeScript code into JavaScript happened from there, and then the execution went through the Node.js environment, right? And that is how the execution went. Okay. So again, what I wanted to convey today is the importance of the TSConfig file. It does have an importance, right? But in context of Playwright, it will not serve our purpose, because Playwright internally manages out of the box, right, this TSConfig file. Okay, but there are 4 parameters. If you wish, you can change, and we will see them once the time comes, right, and if we have a need for them. Okay. So again, what we understood today is the architecture of Playwright, and we understood about the what important things we have, right, and how triggering happens of the execution, and the last part is the importance of the TSConfig file. Okay. Tomorrow onwards, right, we will delve into the conf file. Okay, and we'll understand more about it, and we'll understand about the worker process also in depth. Okay, thank you so much, right, for today. Let's meet tomorrow if no other questions. Correct?
Yeah, no questions. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you everyone.
No questions. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.